The reason why we're talking about men and women and gods and goddesses and distinction is because of late there has been, within the American yogic community, I think out of a real interest in a deeper understanding of India, of yogic philosophy and perspective, and a deeper interest in the thoughts about life and living and humanity and our source and our end that the ancient Indians held. Thoughts about including the ancient Indians in our conversation with ourselves about what the fuck we're doing here in this world, has led to the emergence of a whole discussion of gods and goddesses, dominated primarily by women who are focusing on goddesses and goddess topics and fusing that conversation with feminism so that, the goddesses become an archetype through which women can contemplate their own potential and, in some sense, grasp or re-grasp their power.
Is it hubris to attempt to trace a direct lineage between feminism and the classical constructs around God and goddess?
I think it's a contrivance, personally. I think it's a total contrivance. I think it's a convenience that, sells well in America.
Feeds a need that women are wanting to have met with their frustrations.
Yes. The interesting thing for me is the two primary goddesses that American women are interested in is Lakshmi and Kali. Lakshmi, because Lakshmi is supposed to represent money. Lakshmi doesn't represent money, but that's what it's boiled down to.
I think of Amrita when I think of Lakshmi.
Lakshmi represents the abundance of the hearth, and the hospitality of the home, and an endless welcoming of guests, and an endless caring for children, seeing that to people's comfort and seeing to people's food, their needs. And Lakshmi is about the abundance of the home. In this case, our home, which is the earth. And Kali is the other goddess that they're interested in because, basically,
she cut off Sky's heads.
She wants to, they want revenge on some guy that has pissed them off. They want to kick some guy's ass, so they're going to engage Kali in that process.
It's a dangerous, to me, I learned very on in studying these goddesses to be very careful with that kind of association. It will get you exactly the things you wouldn't want if you truly start tapping into their energy. But
this whole discussion of goddesses fused with feminism, first of all, is it completely doesn't exist in the thinking of the ancients and in any of their conversations.
Which is why you said male and female are equal, because ultimately in the goddess there's not that separation.
And male and female are not even separate.
Right.
Because the discussion comes up that Shiva is pure awareness and the goddess is his power. Well, what power is that the goddess is? Well, Shiva is pure awareness, and the goddess is the respiratory process of Shiva, which expresses itself as the in-breath and the out-breath and the still point in the middle, which manifests itself as the three energy channels, which become the foundation for the expression of all physiology. Shiva, the masculine and the feminine are inseparable. In the same way that the polydynamic system, I'm quoting Alexis Sanderson, who now lives and teaches here, the polydynamic system that is the universe filled with, on an infinite number of scales with polydynamic systems in its own model, universe filled with these polydynamic systems gives rise to the experience of differentiation. But in every dynamic system, on any scale, respiratory process is demonstrated. And that becomes the resonance which permeates the whole universe in the form of vibration, which is called in tantric tradition spanda. This spanda is never different, there's no gender differentiation, and in the ultimate reality, there is no such thing as any gender differentiation. And in human beings, in each of us, there is both masculine and feminine. In every goddess, there is masculine and feminine. In every god, there is masculine and feminine. There are images of Shiva in which he is cut, and he is two halves. One half of him, one leg and one half of his face is masculine, and the other side of him is feminine. In Taoism is yin, which is masculine, and yang, which is feminine, which are constantly flowing into each other.
I think of yin tending to be more feminine and yang masculine.
Is I'm looking at the Taoist model from an Indian perspective, because yang in the Indian perspective, which completely influenced the emergence, right. It preceded and influenced the emergence of Taoism. Yang is Shakti, it is feminine. Yin is masculine and more passive, more internal, more introspective. But the two are constantly flowing one into the other in the same way that masculinity and femininity are two ways of expressing the notion of flow and the boundaries of flows within a larger but still dynamic environment. This whole notion of spiritual feminism, has, in my view, the source of a whole bunch of meaningless tensions that exist within America that promote a kind of a conversation which is reactionary and thoughtless, in a time when, in my view, particularly on sexual topics, in my view, if women were to take the ultimate compassionate and kind and patient perspective with men in topics about sexuality, men would become educated and the whole conversation could be transformed. But because women essentially control the conversation,
from a fear-based reactionary stance.
Fear and reaction, fear of physical violence or any kind of violence, financial dependence, of any kind, these kinds of fear things, exist in everybody. I mean, in my life, I've been nice to people I didn't like at all because, I knew there was some political or economic, circumstance, sort of effect that I was going to generate if I wasn't. I was going to pay some price that wasn't worth it. So, everybody faces those kinds of things. Nobody doesn't face things to be afraid of and challenges to our own self-interest.
But women and other groups will often gather and create an identity as a population to react to something.
And, every reaction is stupid. Reactive behavior, by definition, is stupid because when there is a circumstance that arises, a reaction takes place which causes the reactor to lose sight of the larger environment, the big picture in which phenomenon are being expressed.
Do you think that the teachers in the spiritual, feministic based models right now would be able to hear what you're saying and see that in what they're doing?
I think, I've had the conversation with some people, and I think some people can. I think some people won't. Some people are quite successful in promoting this kind of perspective. And so they have a financial investment in sustaining that argument and keeping your audience highly aroused, for this, and helps to keep them under your control and also helps to keep them segregated from a larger population that might influence their thinking. I think some people could. I think some people won't. Some people can't because they're just not smart enough.